Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I've got an amazing special guest today. Hey, Tony Ponturo, he may not be a household name that comes up regularly. I am certain that you know of his work. He was the vice president of global media, sports, and entertainment marketing at Anheuser-Busch. So if you've watched television at all, with his $600 million budget, you've seen his work. While at Anheuser-Busch, he told me that when he was there, that culture was key, and really that was something that I wanted to dive in deep in our conversation today. That's why he's here. We'll talk more about that shortly. He's formed a company called the Ponturo Group, bringing sports stories to the stage. He's a two-time Tony Award winner. Say that three times fast. A two-time Tony Award winner, and he's brought plays to Broadway such as Lombardi, Magic Bird, and Bronx Bombers. He's an adjunct professor at NYU. He was inducted into the Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame a decade ago. Tony Ponturo has a ton more credits to his name. Tony, welcome. Just tell me, what other amazing things should I be saying about you? What did I leave out? Thank you for being here. All of that.
Well, thanks, Wayne. Well, I think you hit it pretty good. The one thing which is, I think, always interesting is I actually started out as an NBC page. So those that have watched 30 Rock and sort of know what that was all about. And that was the days of the first Saturday Night Live. So that's going back to 1975. So
Wow.
other than the gray hair around my temples, I guess that dates me a little bit. So that was a person who had an economics degree from Villanova, but sort of felt that I wanted to be more in the sports entertainment sort of creative business, but bring my business sense, or what I thought was my business sense, to that space. So one step in front of the other, and that landed me at Anheuser-Busch at a time where we had 3 brands and just a 24 market share. And before I left, we had a 50 market share and about 50 brands. So it was a very fun ride at that point.
That's an impressive ride. And to get someone who's economics based to mix creativity, that's something you don't see all the time. So you're perfect for that. What
Well, I always say I was the one person, particularly when I was producing the sports plays, that actually went to 28 Super Bowls, but then also liked to go to Broadway shows and museums, and even you can get me to a ballet once in a while. So I guess I was blessed with having either curiosity or an interest in a lot of things, which makes life sort of fun.
Well, absolutely, it makes life fun. One of my strong teaching points is about curiosity. One of the things I say in leadership, I look for 3 things. I look for clarity. Do you know where you're headed? Do you know what your values are? I look for communication. Are you able to communicate those values? Because it's one thing to know them, it's another thing to communicate them. And can you live in a space of curiosity? Because when you're there, everything is available to you, and curiosity keeps you out of judgment.
No question. One of the things that I do when I teach, and I'm also now advising students getting a master's degree in sports management at Columbia University. We're sort of blessed in New York having some great universities. And I start out with that I feel that people are a brand, as you and I have gotten to know each other just a little bit, right? We sort of start to represent some brand. And so I always say to young people, what brands do you like? Do you like your Apple iPhone or your watch or Coca-Cola or whatever it may be? And I say what are the things you like about that? And it's about being authentic and real and reliable and have value. And that's the same thing with people. So I try to put that in perspective as well, so that they realize that even as they come into class, they're representing themselves as a brand, maybe how they're dressed, how they act, are they respectful? You can go all the way down the line.
I love that. I'm taking notes. If you see the camera at my end shaking a little bit, it's because I'm frantically writing on the table. People are a brand. Um, that's awesome. Being authentic, real, reliable. That's what makes any brand trustworthy. And in terms of cutting through to what matters most, right? One sharp sword is about, it's not 1,000 dull blades, because there's so much noise. You know, this being in marketing, in the, advertising marketing online, there's so much noise out there. How do you cut through to what matters most? You cut away the noise by being real, by being authentic, by being you, right? And I love that. Love that.
Yeah, I mean, when I worked at Anheuser-Busch, which was 26 years, some people may find it interesting that we didn't have a contract. So no employee, no high-level executive had a contract. And August Busch III, who was our CEO for many years, said it was all about trust. And if he lost trust in you, then you sort of knew just to keep walking, right? There, find the door and just keep going. And I thought about this later after those years, which was, it was a two-way street. In other words, I had an obligation to the company to come to work every day and deliver good work. But in the same respect, the company had a responsibility to do things that would make me want to stay. And so, as you talked about culture in the beginning, one of the things that he believed in, and then we passed it on, which is, if I trust you, I will empower you, which we all want, right? In any role that we have in any kind of job, is give me direction, give me some guidance, listen to me, but let me do my job. And then if I don't do a good job, I probably will know that before you do. But at least I'm able to follow my own instincts and hard work and whatever. And I think that, not to digress too much, but when I did the play on Vince Lombardi, he was 47 when he finally got the opportunity to be a head coach at the Packers. So you would think, in a way, he would be a little, I better not do anything to mess this up. But what he did is go to the board, because as many people know, the Packers didn't have one owner even to this day. They're made up of shareholders. And he said, let me do my job. You're the board. I'll respect you, but I'm going to ask you to empower me, and I'm sort of going to take that empowerment and deliver. And in a team that was basically a misfit team for the 3 years prior, he won 5 championships and the first 2 Super Bowls with the same people before free agency and all these big salaries. So it was about bringing the team together. But more importantly, it was about him, as he talks about when he was alive, is you need to grab that empowerment, but then execute it in the right way. And I think we all respond to that as humans in any kind of work environment.
That's all about ownership, right? Personal ownership of whatever you're doing. And not waiting, right? Not waiting to be told you have permission, but really stepping up and taking it on. Fabulous. I was looking for Lombardi. Is it available at all? Is it filmed? Is it?
We actually tried to do a film. We still may, but actually the Lincoln Center Library here in New York thought it was unique. Now this ran from October of 2010 through May of 2011.
Let me just underscore that you're a Broadway producer. In addition to all the other things, you're a Broadway producer, and you brought the story of Vince Lombardi to Broadway, which got all kinds of acclaim. So I just wanted to underscore that here.
No, I appreciate that. No, it was basically to the point of, I always say, going from conceiving the idea along with my producing partner, Fran Kermser, and then bringing it to Broadway opening night. And we ran for 8 months, which at the time was the longest play to run that year. And the other lesson in that, as I bounce around on you a little bit, is that I learned because that was the first year after I left Anheuser-Busch, and I didn't have the $600 million a year budget
You just needed a hobby. Well, I'll go produce a Broadway
I'll go produce. But what I learned is I went to, even today, the current commissioner, Roger Goodell of the NFL, to say, we like to do this play, but we need you to trust me with the NFL Shield, the logo, and the trophy, the Lombardi Trophy, which is the Super Bowl trophy. And, I'm going to sort of ask you to only charge me what is affordable for a Broadway play, not a big sponsor. And because how we did business and how he knew we would respect his trademark, which is now 100 years old, he was willing to do business. So again, you learn sometimes in real life, real time, was because how you did business in the past as a beer marketer, I now can trust you as a Broadway producer. So going back to the consistent brand and how you conduct yourself and how important that is.
That's all about relationship. All about relationship.
It is about relationships. And one of the things I stress with students and was important as we built the culture at Anheuser-Busch is that we're all smart, right? There's a lot of smart people, but what starts to distinguish us is not too different than our normal life. It's who do we want to spend time with? Who do we trust? Who's a team player? Who chips in equally with everyone else versus those that may be, you hate to say it, but maybe untrustworthy. You can't rely on them. They don't pull their weight. And so that human behavior element is sort of, in my opinion, the difference maker versus all the smart people in the room, particularly in a corporate structure. Even if
That's
you're
huge.
a doctor.
I want to underscore that because that's huge. We go to experts. And there are some experts that are amazing out there, online space or in our own research, or, for those in my audience that are looking to be seen as experts. We seek experts. And what makes one more accessible than the other is the relationship that they build, right?
No question. I mean, it's about listening. I talked to a student yesterday, actually, who was asking for advice on particular internships in the sports world, and probably what we all on our side of the table like to hear is, and she was from China, so this wasn't even her own country, and she said, "I trust you. I feel comfortable with you as I sort of expose the things that I think are important or not." And that's so important that people are willing to talk to you, particularly if you're in a position of leadership. We all would love to tell certain business people or manager even of a McDonald's or Walmart or whatever, it's not that you have earned the right to the corner office that makes you a leader. You're only a leader if people want to follow you and they trust you. And the
right.
old saying, if you walk the talk. I've heard some people be let go, and some of the reasons are, that person sort of strutted along like a peacock but didn't walk the talk, and people pick up on that immediately.
Huge.
So it's about, as we said, real, authentic, being open, and that doesn't mean, particularly in today's age, and maybe as a baby boomer we did as well, but the millennials particularly want their voice, right? Every generation wants their voice, but that doesn't mean that you can just have your total way. It means you have to collaborate and work together. But us as leaders have to keep reminding ourselves that it is about giving people that empowerment and listening and giving them trust until they misuse that value you've given them.
I love that. You talked about collaboration. One of the things that I'm working on currently is a TED Talk, And I talk about some of the absurdity I've seen in, it's also in my keynote, some of the absurdity I've seen in leadership. I had a leader at a major firm. I was trying to get him to collaborate with some of the other departments and some of the different levels, even within his department. And his response to me was, and he was dead serious, "Oh, I'd be happy to collaborate. If they do it my way, I am happy to collaborate." And, and it's like, pardon?
I'm out.
Exactly. Time out. What? I'm sorry. Let's look up the definition of collaboration. It's
I, I
amazing.
was I was asked similarly to help bring a group together where they felt that their boss, who was the founder and CEO of the company, who claimed he had an open door, and it may have been physically open, but when people walked in to suggest things, he was very closed-minded. So they asked me to facilitate sort of an off-campus, if you will, session, which we did. This founder CEO started the meeting with, "I just want to let everyone know I don't owe anybody anything, et cetera, et cetera." And I went, "Time out. You cannot start a meeting about open dialogue with, 'I don't owe anybody anything.'" So already we're off base. So, when we talk about it, it always seems so simple and obvious, but in reality, as you pointed out, there are so many people who don't understand that and need to, you know, uh, take a step back and get a better perspective from people like yourself as you coach and teach and communicate these kind of positive things.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. Let's talk about you, your history, and even some of the stuff you're working on now. Talk about you, we've all had plenty of challenges. I mean, as in our climb to here, and we're not just stopping here. There's certainly more. So, in our climb, there's been plenty of challenge. In your recent history, in your past history, something you're working on now, what's been a big challenge, and how have you used, just to bring it back to one sharp sword, how have you used some decisive cutting through to discern what matters, and how have you let go of what doesn't matter, and how have you stepped into what does?
The one thing I learned as a young advertising executive, I had a boss who actually thought I was too nice. But more importantly, he thought that I thought the world would take care of me in the sense of my career if I did good work. And there's, to some credit, that's true. But what he really was trying to teach me is the only one really responsible for your career and your life is you. And so he wanted to give have me take more ownership of that. So, quick example is there was like a small little office with no window. I'd been there for about 2 years, and as I looked around, I said, "I think that should be my office." And a month went by, and he didn't give me the office. And I went to my media boss because this gentleman was the head of the department. I said, "Why isn't Bob giving me that office?" He says, "He thinks you're too nice. He wants you to ask for it." So 6 o'clock one night, he comes down. I said, "I'm moving that into that office." He said, "It's about time." And so that always rings in my ear that the only one steering your ship, if you will, is you. There was times even at Anheuser-Busch, and I used these examples because it's sort of like a sports analogy is that if you go into a prevent defense, like you generally will lose, right? Most people are scared to stay offensive and be offensive, not offensive, but offensive,
Right.
in a respectful way. And that leaning forward, if you will, is really what's important. So probably 7 years into my Anheuser-Busch role, I felt my boss, who was a vice president, was starting to do some things around me. And I went to him, and I was from New York, and I said, "Listen, Chuck, you know, I feel you're not letting me do my job for whatever reason. And if there's something wrong or we need to talk it out, you know, I'll go back to New York and I'll be fine, you know. And he said, no, you're right. I was wrong. Let's fix this. And again, how many employees are afraid to address their boss when there's something off and just address it full head on. So I kept learning that you had to speak up for yourself, and that builds confidence. Um, from a business standpoint, our CEO, and this would take too long to tell, but didn't think that the new stadium in St. Louis should be called Busch Stadium because prior to that time, the Anheuser-Busch owned the St. Louis Cardinals, but now no longer did. And so he heard that I was investigating that, and he was very much against it. And quite frankly, talked pretty strongly to me about that.
He was against you investigating it?
He was against that the company would actually put their name on this new stadium because we didn't own it.
Okay.
I knew, not to overcomplicate this, that it was an emotional decision, not something that made sense. So, and he had said, I don't want you to do that, basically threatening my job and my role going forward. But you can do a marketing deal. You can do TV, you can do radio, you can do sponsorship. What I was able to work out with the Cardinals privately is to do a long-term deal. It was actually 25 years for the things I was allowed to do, and then actually incorporate the naming rights for free. And then I was able to go back because they wanted a long-term sponsor. The community in St. Louis, I knew, wanted it to still be called Busch Stadium. And then I went back to the CEO to say, what if we did a long-term marketing deal, but got the naming rights for free, in which he was then okay. I'm very proud of that because I always know that the current stadium, this goes back to 2006, would not have been called Busch Stadium if I had not, one could argue, well, why didn't you listen to the CEO? But having been there for 24 years, I had the confidence in myself to go back and say, let me just shine a different light on it. And if you still think that way, then fine. But you may want to, respectfully think about this, which he did, and came the result. So what all this is saying, to your point, which is cutting through the sword, is having confidence in yourself, which only comes from continuing to sort of get out there and do, and so confidence keeps growing, and not being afraid to fail, right? I mean,
That's
we
huge.
all make mistakes, and we learn from that. I always tell my students is experience is not that you've been in the business 40 years and you have a little gray hair. The experience is you've been hit by the train coming down the track several times. And so now I can see the train coming and you don't see it, and I can push you off the track using my odd sort of storytelling here so that you don't get hit, because that's really what experience is.
This is massive. There are multiple concepts that you've brought up. Don't be afraid to fail. Balance that with, I have to trust you, right? So it's like when you speak from integrity, you're showing up saying, I believe this is the right path. And then you respectfully tell the CEO, hey, let me go down this path. You also have some magical, I don't know if it's innate, ability to understand what 3, maybe 4 different parties. You've got a community, you've got a business organization that owns a stadium, you've got the CEO, and you're balancing all the wants of each of those, and you came up with a solution that was like, hey, everybody wins. What do you think? It's like there doesn't seem to be a compromise in there, right? It's like, how did you do
Yeah,
that?
it was a win-win, and it was so, to me, and I guess as you say, it was sort of blessed with the vision of it. It was so obvious, and it's like in any relationship, you sort of know when emotions may be overriding the conversation, the decision making, and how you can bring it back to sort of a square one and maybe look at it from a different perspective.
How do you do that? This is kind of a one sharp sword moment. How do you acknowledge emotion while at the same time coming back down to the actual process to move forward? That's huge.
I think first it's about the observation. I'm a big believer in I respect data in a marketing sense, but I can walk into a stadium and watch fans and people and families and understand sort of what's going on. You can go to any event and sort of just be an observer of people. And so that's sort of the start, understanding that. I think what's so important, and there's many leadership books that I've read, and so it's not so much what you say but how you say it. And so when you're talking to anybody, we all sometimes tend to be a little too aggressive and boastful, and people sort of turn us off. But if you come at it in a more, have you thought about this? Or I respect what you just said, but let me just put a perspective on it that maybe you didn't think of. Um, to me, that's one of the best things you can do, because no one wants to be bulldozed in any situation, and it's about allowing a careful and honest conversation and bringing logic and facts. You can't. No one wants someone, just part of the expression, running off at the mouth with what could be their viewpoint, which is respectful, but if you can bring logic and facts and some perspective to it, then it has more substance. And so those are the things, because you're trying to change an opinion, right? You're trying to change someone's viewpoint, and they're only going to do it if you sort of carefully thread them through the needle, which isn't being manipulative. It's just sort of saying, let's just talk this out a little bit and see if there's something better here, a better solution. We had a president who actually had photographic memory, and in a way it became frustrating, because you would hand him a piece of paper, say, here's a deal to sponsor the New York Yankees. So I'm sitting in New York, so I'll use that example. And he would look at it and then put it down. He goes, he would give you a quick opinion, and then you could easily have said, oh, okay, but you had to sort of go back and say, well, did you understand this? And he'd go, well, explain that a little bit more. And then if you explained it, what was brilliant about him is he would be willing to say, you know what, now that you've pointed out that additional fact or perspective that I didn't think of real quickly, I'm now going to change my mind and more go to what you're suggesting, which I thought it was good on both sides, because one is not just folding like a tent, but I thought it was also brilliant on his part to be open-minded and not just slam the door in a presidential role.
Great leaders have that open-minded ability, not making up their mind, having a I'm leaning toward. And I think what happens where people get horribly bound up is, and this is at every level, being a human, we have a problem with confirmation bias. We have an opinion, and right now, as we're taping this, there's an election about to happen, right? And so it doesn't matter what side you're on, you are focused on, well, I believe this, and no one goes into a debate going, I wonder if I can be swayed, right? It's like you have a belief, and you're going to look for things that serve to confirm that belief. That's called confirmation bias. Well, to have a leader say, I have a belief and I'm open, that's gigantic. And I think that's a great leadership lesson. So good for you for for being able to open that door, because so many would pound on it. So many would say, well, you're wrong, and here's why. I think about my dad too. My dad is someone who's very smart. He's 98, which is incredible. He still has opinions. And years ago, I had to teach him his way of being involved in my life was to point a finger and go, you know what you should do is, and it's like, well, as an authority figure, as someone who's smart, I felt like he knew better. And what I realized was that was his way of being involved with me in my life. You know what you should do? And I had to teach him, hey, I have a suggestion. Would you like to hear it? And that opened the door to conversation because, coming up, it's like, well, this is an area of my study. What do you mean you know what you should do? I think it's really important the way you approach. You were talking about, you didn't use the word assertive, you used being on offense, right? But it's really about assertiveness. It's about, I'm going to put my glasses back on so I can read what I wrote. I loved what you said. This may actually become a Wednesdays with Wayne blog post. Careful and honest communication. I love that term. I think that's gigantic. Gigantic. And that's how you live your life, isn't it, Tony?
It's about being yourself, and you talked about your father. Mine unfortunately passed away, but he, after World War II, actually got an undergraduate degree at Vanderbilt, but then got an industrial psychology degree at Columbia, a master's degree, and then was a labor HR person for RCA for 40 years.
Wow.
And his style was one, and at times maybe was frustrating because you wanted more. But I always use the description of when little kids go bowling, they put the bumpers up, so they're never going to go into the gutter, but from there they're on their own. And so I always felt my father parented like, I'll make sure you don't go in the gutter, but other than that, I want you to steer your own path. Which again, in reflection, was really very positive.
Very.
One of the things that when I first was working at the advertising agencies before Anheuser-Busch, and I observed people negotiating, and I didn't like how it was done because I felt that, I was on the phone and I felt that they were misleading. One could argue lying about facts in order to get where they wanted. It wasn't me. And I went back to my father and I said, maybe this isn't the business I should be in. And he said, you have to bring your own personality and style to anything you do. So do it the way you feel comfortable. And if you're still uncomfortable in a year, then go move on. And so what I started to do to someone on the other side of the fence is say, here's where I need to get. This is my business plan. And if we can get there in 5 minutes, then we're done. We don't have to negotiate for 5 months. I'm going to be transparent, and I'm going to give you the facts I need, and it just became a simpler process, but it also became an honest process. So, and then the positive over the years, people would say, if Tony says this, you can take it to the bank, because there was no games, there was no gimmicks, there was no standing on your head. It was like, we're going to buy the Super Bowl. Here's what we need. And understand, if you're NBC or you're CBS or you're Fox, you have plans too. So as long as we don't, either one of us try to take advantage of each other, but find a simple, collaborative win for each other, then let's be happy, and we'll sell beer and you'll create advertising to buy sports rights.
That's awesome. Can you talk about a time when, the rules of let's just be good people, right? I have a movement called Starts With One. It's about rehumanization, one person at a time. And you're really living that. You're the embodiment of, I see you, I'm a good human, I'm showing up as I am as a good human. I see you as a good human until you prove me wrong. Ta-da, right? And can you talk about a time, you're dealing in millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. A lot's on the line. have you ever been transparent and someone has taken advantage of you?
Yeah, I'm sure there was many negotiations where, I say many, but a few um, where you almost had to draw a line. In other words, let's see what this person is really made of, or not willing to budge or be collaborative, which I always felt was, I remember once someone selling a sports franchise, a sponsorship, who just would not move. And so we went to dinner that night, and I actually brought him the definition of negotiation from Webster's dictionary, which was, this give and take. And at times you had to get a little, toothy. It's not always, but 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 you just had to make it clear that um, uh, that you just weren't going to be stepped all over, which was important. I think one of the other things, and I learned when I first wanted to do the Broadway shows in sports, the the Broadway community was somewhat skeptical, which is why would you do sports? So it's going to fail. Even some of the initial people that we hired, not the cast or the creative people, but a general management team or a PR team, we learned later is like we thought you would never last 30 days, and so you realize that you had skeptics on your team. They were willing to take the money you were paying them, and they ultimately did the work, but that you had to feel strong enough about the property and take the risk, right? There's no guarantee that it would make sense. And what one of the as you know, one of the toughest things in any business or role is in some cases jealousy, or it's not the not invented here sort of syndrome, and new things also scare people. So you even have to be stronger. I always say 26 years at Anheuser-Busch with no contract, I'm not naive to think that there was an executive somewhere along the line over those 26 years probably trying to chop my feet out, right? It's like, but it's like you just never gave them that opportunity to do that, so you never, in a way, you never relax. And then if you always, I maybe this comment, it always rings in me. I think it's about the being authentic. Is our cast in Lombardi, and we created this sort of almost locker room mentality, and they would say, this is so great. But one of the cast members said to me, what I respect about you is that you come to the rehearsals and everything sort of dressed as a producer. Now, what does that mean? I was in a sport coat, which I'm not today, but I wasn't like, trying to be a cast member. It was like I knew my role, and they respected that because it was like, you're the business person. You're not trying to be the cast. You're not trying to tell us how to act. You're doing your role. We're doing our role, and it all comes together. And it keeps underlining that real, authentic, honest, straightforward communication that keeps resonating time and time again.
Oh, it's awesome. You've got a lane, stay in it. At the same time, don't be afraid to step back and have a broader perspective. Uh, it's basically sports analogies are your thing, and I'm terrible at them. So tell me if I'm on track. uh, it is as if you are, and you must be, the quarterback of your own life. You have to see the entire field. You have to do your job as the quarterback. You're not going to be the one blocking, right? You're not going to go in and go, well, today I'm the tackle. You are the quarterback. You are the one that sees the entire field. So you need that perspective, and you know what your objective is. And it could be short-term steps. It could be, boy, I sure hope this works. And it always relies on other people, right? The in your life, you can't do what you do if you don't have people along the way to engage with. How'd I do
Exactly.
on, did I do
No,
okay?
no, it's good. No, and it's about, you hear in sports, a coach will say, "I've lost the locker room." Well, what does that mean? It means that his players obviously have stopped listening to him or her. But it's more than likely happened because they haven't adjusted. I think anyone in any kind of role, you know, the times change, technology has changed things, generational things are changed. One of the things I keep stressing to young people who sometimes give the impression they think they know it all, I said, I'm 67. I don't know it all. I'm learning every day, and that's what makes life so amazing. And I can learn when I step into my classrooms, I say, this semester will work if I'm learning from you and you're learning from me, and it's the back and forth. So and so so whether you're a leader in business, you're a coach, you're a teacher, whatever profession you're in, you have to keep an open mind and keep adjusting to what's going on. And even if that means communicating different, it's all the same messages. Um, I do something interesting. I don't know if you've ever done this, Wayne, but if you go back and you look at Plato, Aristotle, Confucius, and look at some of their sayings, which always is amazing to me, that's like 200 BC or 500 BC. Many of the leadership things that we say today originated back in those sayings. We've just retooled them a little bit,
Yes.
and so but my point of that is, as humans, we haven't changed that much. The inner uh,
Right.
center of us, we have all these things bombarding us, but the core things that drive us to either appreciate someone else, want to be around someone else, work with someone else, have not changed in, thousands of years.
Yep. Yep. Millennia, exactly. And it probably existed before them. They were the first to be documented that way. So it's amazing, right? I'm sitting here realizing that my mouth was slightly agape. I'm entranced. This is Tony. What you're offering is it's gold, and I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything you're working on now that our audience can help to support you in, or that you're excited about, we should be waiting for, or anything you want to talk about that we haven't touched on?
There's, and I appreciate that, but there's nothing, as I mentioned, I'm working with young students, which I guess is my give back, to society, and because it's not about the money per se, it's about helping young people go out and attack today's world. And as I consult some companies looking at how to communicate in today's sort of cluttered space. I've always tried to do my best to personally contribute to relative charities. I was on the board for many years of the Variety Club in St. Louis, which is about raising money for small children with prosthesis and who need stuff like that. But it's about, I think you know the one thing is, particularly for those that may be older listening, I think that, you know, I've seen friends who sort of turn off the spigot, and then they go, why did I turn off, learning and contributing? And they sort of want to sort of figure out how to do some things. The days of my father's generation, and maybe yours, which was you get to retirement age, you go sit on a beach and play golf. There's so much we all can do
Yeah.
to help the next generation of people's coming over. So I guess that's where, if I'm leaving any message of collaboration, is how can we all, because I think we all need a little, we could use a shoulder to sometimes lean on, cry on, talk to. And if we can do that, in even the most informal way, then that's a real positive. And you're doing that every day. So,
Thank you.
we all need that. And what I think this probably better than anyone is when you talk to people, they will tell you what they need to hear. What you're really doing, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but it is you're really presenting back to them almost what they're saying. Many people, not all, know what they want. They need the confidence and the support to say, yeah, you're right. Your instinct. I always say, what is your internal instinct telling you? That's probably the right thing. You just want someone to say, yeah, you're right on, and go for it. So it's one day at a time, but it's a good one day at a time, and just trying to spread positive things for people that can learn from it.
That's so great. More gold right there. This is all about significance. You've moved from the whole idea of starts with one is the idea that there are influencers out there, and the influencers are about look at me very often. Look at me. Look what I can do. Look how many likes I got. Look at my statement. Isn't that great? And really, they've left the audience out. Other than, can I get your likes? Can I get your attention? And then from there, it's about success, which is look what I've gained. Look what I've built. Look what I have. And a lot of people stop there. And what you seem to have lived and now certainly espouse, what you're giving to others is the next step, which is significance. How do you become truly significant in the world? And you become truly significant by engaging a person at a time, a group at a time, but truly listening. You listen to yourself. A lot of people have stopped doing that. If they listen to themselves, they would know that look at me isn't all about it, isn't all great. That really it's may I acknowledge another, may I see another. And so truly moving from influence to success to significance. And really that is what being an outfluencer is, not an influencer, right? So that's fabulous. All of this is just so good, Tony. Thank you for joining me.
No, I enjoy it and appreciate it.
Thank you. Awesome. This is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. My guest today, Tony Pontero. I'm Dr. Wayne Pernell, Dr. P, your outfluencer.